Hi, everyone. I am Michael Hingson, your host for Unstoppable Mindset. And today we get to I won't say interview because it's really more of a conversation. We get to have a conversation with Greg Hess, better known as Coach Hess. And we'll have to learn more about that. But he has accomplished a lot in the world over the past 70 or so years. He's a best-selling author. He's a business coach. He's done a number of things. He's managed Magic Johnson's basketball camps, and my gosh, I don't know what all. But he does, and he's going to tell us. So, Coach, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're really glad that we have a chance to be with you today.
Well, I'm honored to be here, Michael. Thank you very much. And it's just a pleasure to be a part of your program and the Unstoppable Mindset. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're glad you're here and looking forward to having a lot of fun. Why don't we start? I love to start with, tell us about kind of the early Greg growing up and all that stuff.
Oh boy. Yeah, I was awfully fortunate, I think, to have a couple of parents that were paying attention to me, I guess, as I grew up. At the same time they were growing up. My father was a Marine, returned from the Korean War, and I was born shortly after that. And he worked for Westinghouse Electric as a nuclear engineer. We lived in Southern California for a while, but I was pretty much raised in Idaho, small town called Pocatello, Idaho, and Idaho State University's there. And I found a love for sports. I was, again, I was very fortunate to be able to be kind of coordinated and do well with baseball, football, basketball, of course, are the sports that we tend to do. But yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that and growing up, under the son of a Marine. It's kind of like being the son of a Marine, I guess, in a way. There was certain ways you had to function and morals and values that you carried forward and pride in doing good work that I learned through my youth. And so, being raised in Idaho was a real great experience.
How so?
Well, a very open space. I mean, in those days, when we see kids today and kids being brought up, I think one of the things that often is missing, that was not missing for me as a youth, is that we would get together as a group in the neighborhood and we'd figure out the rules of the game. We'd figure out whatever we were playing, whether it was basketball or kick the can or you name it. But we would organize ourselves and have a great time doing that as a community in our neighborhood. And as kids, we learned to be leaders and kind of organize ourselves. Today, that is not the case. And so I think so many kids are built into, the parents are helicoptering all the kids to all the events and nonstop going. And I think we're losing that leadership potential of just organizing and planning a little bit, which I was fortunate to have that experience. And I think it had a big influence on how I grew up and built into the leader that I believe I am today.
I had a conversation with someone earlier today on another podcast episode, and one of the observations that he made is that we don't laugh at ourselves today. We don't have humor today. Everything is taken so seriously. We don't laugh, and the result of that is that we become very stressed out.
Yeah. Boy, if you can't laugh at yourself, But as far as, I know you've got a large background in your sales world and so on, but I found that in working with people to get them to be clients or to be a part of my world, is that if they can laugh with me, or I can laugh with them, or we can get them laughing, there's a high tendency of conversion and them wanting to work with you. There's just something about relationships and being able to laugh with people, I think, that draw us closer in a different way. And I agree, it's missing. How do we make that happen more often? Tell more jokes or what?
Well, one of the things that he suggests, and he's a coach, a business coach also, he tells people, turn off the TV, unplug your phone, go read a book. And he said, especially go buy a joke book. Just find some ways to make yourself laugh. And he spends a lot of time talking to people about humor and laughter. And the whole idea is to deal with getting rid of stress. And if you can laugh, you're going to be a whole lot less stressful.
Boy, there's something that you just feel so good after a good laugh, you know? I mean, I feel that way sometimes after a good cry, you know,
Yeah,
as well when I tend to, you know, like Bambi comes on and I know what happens to that little fawn or whatever, the mother, and I
yeah.
can't help but cry during the credits. What's up with that?
Well, and my wife was a teacher. My late wife was a teacher for 10 years, and she read Old Yeller, and eventually it got to the point where she had to have somebody else read the part of the book where Yeller gets killed,
Oh, yeah,
because
I
the babies.
remember that book well.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah.
I like it was a great book and a great movie. Well, talk about humor, and I think it's really important that we laugh at ourselves too. And you mentioned Westinghouse. I have a Westinghouse story, so I'll tell it.
Yeah.
I sold a lot of products to Westinghouse, and one day I was getting ready to travel back there. The first time I went back to meet the folks in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
and I had also received an order, and they said this order has to be here. It's urgent. So we did all the right things, and I even went out to the loading dock the day before I left for Westinghouse because that was the day it was supposed to ship. And I even touched the boxes, and the shipping guy said, "These are them. They're labeled. They're ready to go." So I left the next morning, went to Westinghouse, and the following day, I met the people who I had worked with over the years, and I had even told them I saw the packages on the dock, and when they didn't come in, and I was on an airplane, so I didn't know this. They called and they spoke to somebody else at the company, and they said the boxes aren't here and they're supposed to be here. And the lady said, "I'll check on it." And they said, "Well, Mike said he saw him on the dock," and she burst out laughing because she knew I was blind. And and they said, "What are you laughing at?" And he said, "He saw him on the dock. You know he's blind, don't you?" And so when I got there, they had to, and it was in fun, but well, not totally, because what happened was that the president decided to intercept the boxes and send it to somebody else who he thought was more important. More important than Westinghouse? I have a problem with that. But anyway, so
Yeah.
they shipped out and they got there the day I arrived, so they had arrived a day late. Well, that was okay. But of course, they lectured me. "You didn't see him on the dock." I said, "No, no, no, you don't understand, and this is what you have to think about." "Yeah, I didn't tell you I was blind. Why should I?" The definition of to see in the dictionary is to perceive. You don't have to use your eyes to see things, you know? That's the
Yeah.
problem with you light dependent people. You got to see everything with your eyes. Well, I don't have to. And they were on the dock, and anyway, we had a lot of fun with it. But
I
but you
love it.
gotta have but you gotta have humor,
Yeah.
and we've got to not take things so seriously. I agree with what we talked about earlier with this other guest. It really is important to not take life so seriously that you can't have some fun. And I
Yeah.
agree that there are serious times, but still you got to have fun.
Yeah. No kidding. Well, I've got a short story for you. Maybe it fits in with that. That one of the things I did when I'll give a little background on this. I was a basketball coach and school teacher for 14 years and had an opportunity to take over an assistant coach job at California Lutheran University. And I
Mm.
was able to choose whatever I wanted to in terms of doing graduate work. And so I said, you know, and I'd always been a bike rider, so I decided to ride my bike from up from Jasper, Alberta, all the way down to Thousand Oaks, California, on a solo bike ride, which was going to be a big event. But I wanted to think about what I really wanted to do, and you know, I loved riding, and I thought it was a good time to do that tour, so I did it. And so I'm riding down the coast, and once I got into California, there's a bunch of big redwoods there and so
Yeah.
on. Yeah, and I set up my camp, you know, and every night I camped out. I was totally solo. I didn't have any support. And so I put up my tent and everything, and here a guy came in, big, tall guy, a German guy, and he had ski poles sticking out of the back of his backpack, you know. And he set up camp, and we're talking that evening, and I had a, you know, sitting around the fire. I said, look, his name was Axel. I said, hey, Axel, what's up with the ski poles? And he says, well, I was up in Alaska and, and I was climbing around in glaciers or whatever. And when I started to ride, I figured they're pretty light. I just take them with me. And I'm thinking, that's crazy. I mean, you're thinking every ounce matters when you're riding those long distances. Anyway, the story goes on. Next morning, I get on my bike and I head down the road and, I go for a day. I don't see Axel or anything. But the next morning, I stop at a place around Modesto, California, something where
Mm-hmm.
there a cafe. And I'm sitting in the cafe, and it's a place where a lot of cyclists hang out. So there was probably 20 or 30 cyclists leaning against the building. And I show up with, kind of a bit of an anomaly. I'd ridden a long time, probably 1,500 miles or so at that point in 15 days. And these people are all kind of talking to me and so on. Well, then all of a sudden I look up while I'm eating breakfast, and here goes the ski poles down the road. And I went, oh my gosh, that's got to be him. So I jump up out of my chair and I run out and I yell, hey, Axel, hey, Axel, loud as I could. And he stops and starts coming back. And then I look back at the cafe and all these people have their faces up on the windows, kind of looking like, oh, what's going to happen? And they thought that I was saying mistakenly, hey, asshole.
Oh, gosh. Oh. Well, hopefully you straightened that out somehow.
Immediately, we had a great time and a nice breakfast and moved on. But what an
That's good.
experience! And you get
Yeah.
the idea. Sometimes we cross up on our communications. People don't quite get what's going on. They're taking things too seriously, maybe, huh?
Oh, yeah. We always sometimes hear what we want to hear. Well, so what did you get your college degree in originally?
My first, yeah, well, I love the question. My first degree, I had a Bachelor of Education for,
Okay.
years calculus, but then I went on, and then I had my choice here of graduate work.
Right.
And I looked at education and I thought, gosh, if I answered committee on every test, I'll probably pass. I said, I need something more than this. So in the bike ride, what I came to the conclusion was that the command line, being DOS command line, was the way we were computing. And
Yeah.
at that time in the 90s, we were moving into something we call graphical user interface. At that
Right.
time, of course, now it's the way we live in so many ways. And I thought, that's the curve. I'm going to chase that. And so I did an MBA in business process reengineering
Hmm.
at Cal Lu and knocked that off in 18 months, where I had a lot of great experiences learning, being an assistant coach, and got to do some of Magic Johnson's camps for him while I was there. California Lutheran University's campus is where the Cowboys used to do their training camp.
Right.
So they had very nice facilities. And so putting on camps like that and stuff were a good thing, and fairly close to the LA scene, of course, Thousand Oaks.
Right.
You know
Well,
that area.
oh, I do.
Yeah.
I do. I do pretty well.
Yeah.
So, so you you were always involved in doing coaching. That was just one of the things when you started to get involved in sports. In addition to playing them, you found that coaching was a useful thing for you to do.
Absolutely. I loved it. I loved the game. I loved to see people grow. And yeah, it was just a thrill to be a part of it. Got published a few times in some of the things that I did within it, but it was mostly being able to change a community. Let me share this with you. When I went to Westlake Village High School,
Hmm.
this was a very, very wealthy area. I had like Frankie Avalon's kid in my class and stuff. And, I'm riding bike every day. So these kids are driving up in Mercedes and BMWs in the student parking lot. And as I looked around the school and saw, and we built a basketball, and I needed to build more pride, I think, in the community. I felt was an important part of me as the head coach. They kind of think that the head coach of their basketball program, I think, is more important than the mayor. I never could figure that one out, but that was where I was.
Spend some time in
Uh,
North Carolina around Raleigh, Durham. You'll understand.
yeah, yeah, I get that. So
Or
what I,
Kentucky.
yeah, 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 big basketball places.
Yeah.
So what I concluded, and I'd worked before in working with Special Olympics. And I thought, what we can do at this school is we can have a Special Olympics tournament, because I got to know the people in LA County that were running Special Olympics in Ventura County. And we brought them together and we ran a tournament. And we had a tournament of, I don't know, maybe 24 teams in total. It was a big deal. And it was really great to get the community together, because part of my program was that I kind of expected everybody, pretty strong expectation, so to say, of 20 hours of community service. If you're in our basketball program, you got to have some way, whether it's with your church or whatever. I want to recognize that you're out there doing something for the community. And of course, I set this Special Olympics event up so that everybody had the opportunity to do that. And what a change it made on the community! What a change it made on the school. Yeah, it was great for the Special Olympians and them. They had a blast, but it was the kids that now, were part of our program, the athletes that had special skills, so to say, in their world, all of a sudden realized that the world was a different place. And it made a big difference in the community. People supported us in a different way. I was just really proud to have that as kind of a feather in my cap for being there and recognizing that and doing it. It was great.
So cool.
Yeah.
And now, where are you now?
I'm in West Houston.
Oh, that's right. You're in Houston now. So
Yeah, Katy, Texas area.
yeah, you've moved around. Well, so you started coaching, and how long did you do that?
Well, I coached for 14 years in basketball, right? And then I went into business after I graduated my MBA, and I chased the learning curve, Michael, of that learning curve I talked about a few minutes ago. It was the graphical user interface and the
Right.
use of compute and how all that was going to affect us going forward. And I continued to chase that learning curve and had all kinds of roles and positions in the process. And they paid me a little more money as I went along. It was great. Ended up being the chief advisor for cloud services at Halliburton.
Mm.
Yeah, so I was an upstream guy, if you know that. I mean, seismic data and where we're storing seismic data. And that
Yeah.
was when the transition was going. I'm not putting that in the cloud. You kidding me? That's proprietary data. Of course, today we know how it exists, but in those days we had to, build little separate silos to carry the data and deliver it accordingly for the geophysicists and people to make the decision on the drill bit. So we did really well at that in that role, or I did really well, and the team that I had just did fantastic. I was real proud. I just got when I was having my 70th birthday party, I invited one of the individuals who was on that team, a guy named Will Rivera, and Will ended up going to Google after he'd worked us there. I talked him into, or kind of convinced him, so to say, or pushed him, however you do that in coaching, coached him into getting an MBA. And then he's gone on and he tells me, you better be sitting down, coach. When I talked to him a couple of days ago, I just got my PhD from George Washington University in AI technology. And I just turned inside out with happiness. It was so thrilling to hear that, of somebody you'd worked with. But while I was at Halliburton, I got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, Michael. And so that's what changed me into where I am today as a transition and transformation.
Well, how did that happen? Because I know usually people say pancreatic cancer is pretty undetectable. How did it happen that you were fortunate enough to get it diagnosed at obviously must have been a somewhat early age or early time?
Kind of a miracle, I guess. I mean, I was traveling to my niece's high school graduation in Helena, Montana. And when we were returning back to Houston, we flew through Denver, and I was suffering from some very serious AFib. My heart was going up to 100 beats a minute, and down to 100, and it was all over the place. And when I got off the plane, I wasn't feeling well, of course, and they put me on a gurney. And next thing you know, I'm on the way to the hospital, and they were getting ready for an embolism potential, those type of things. And I went to the hospital. They're testing everything out, getting saying, well, before we put the shock paddles on your heart to get back, we better do a CAT scan. And so they CAT scanned me and came back from the CAT scan and said, well, you know what? There's no blood clot issues, but this mass in your pancreas is a concern. And so that was the discovery of that. And 14 days from that point, I had surgery, and there was no guarantees even at that point. Even though we knew we were early, that I had to get things in order, and I was told to put things in order a little bit going into it. But miracles upon miracles, they got it all. I came away with a drainage situation where they drained my pancreas for almost 6 months. It was a terrible pancreatic fluid's not good stuff. It really eats up your skin, and it was bad news. But here I am, and when I came away from that, a lot of people thought I was going to die because I heard pancreatic cancer. And I got messages from people that were absolutely powerful in the difference I'd made in their life by being a coach and a mentor and helping them along in their life. And I realized that the big guy upstairs saved me for a reason. And I put my stake in the ground and said, you know what, I'm going to do this the best I can. And that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years.
So what caused the AFib?
Yeah, not sure.
Okay.
So when I became the clipboard kid a little bit, because what the assumption was is that as soon as I came out of surgery and they took this tumor out of me, because I was in AFib throughout all of surgery, AFib went away. And they're thinking now the stress of a tumor could be based on it's a stress disease or so on, the AFib, there could be a high correlation. And so they started looking into that, and I think they still are. But, if you got AFib, maybe we should look for tumors somewhere else is a potential, what they were thinking. And, that.
But removing the tumor,
Yeah,
when
sorry.
tumor was removed, the AFib went away?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
I had someone who came on the podcast some time ago, and he had an interesting story. He was at a bar one night. Everything was fine, and then suddenly he had this incredible pain down in his testicles. Actually, went to the hospital to discover that he had very serious prostate cancer, and had no clue that that was even in the system until the pain.
yeah.
And so, but even so, they got it early enough that, or it was in such a place where they got it, and he's fine.
Wow. Whoa. Well, stuff they do with medicine these days, the heart and everything else. I mean, it's just fantastic. I recently got a new hip put in, and it's been like a new lease on life for me, Michael. I'm golfing like I did 10 years ago, and I'm, able to ride my bike and not limp around, and with just pain every time I stepped. And it's just so fantastic. I'm so grateful for that
Yeah.
technology and what they can do with that. Whoa.
Well, I went through a heart valve replacement earlier this year, and I had a physical 20 years ago or more, and they said as part of it we did an EKG or an echocardiogram, and he said you've got a slightly leaky heart valve. It may never amount to anything, but it might. Well, it finally did apparently, and so we went in and they orthoscopically went in and they replaced the valve. So it was really cool. It took an hour and we were all done. No open heart surgery or anything, which was great. And I know exactly what you mean. I feel a whole lot better.
I'll bet
Medicine
you do.
does a lot.
Circulation. Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, making that commitment to coaching was a big deal for me, but it's brought me more joy and happiness. And I'll share with you in terms of a why situation for me. When I came away from that, I started thinking about why am I kind of, a lot of what's behind what you're doing and what brings you joy. And I went back to when I was 8 years old. I remember dribbling the ball down the basketball court, making a fake, threw a pass over to one of my buddies. They scored the layup and we won the game. That moment at that time, passing and being a part of sharing with someone else and growing as a group and kind of feeling a joy is what I continued to probably pursue all my life. You think about success and it's how much money you make and how much this and whatever else we were in certain points of our life. I look back on all this and go, when I had real happiness and what mattered to me is when I was bringing joy to others by giving assists and whatever. And so I'm at home now, and it's a shame I didn't understand that at 62, until I was 62 years old.
Yeah.
But now I'm very focused and I know that's what brings me joy. So that's what I like to do. And that's what I do.
I know for me, I have the honor and the joy of being a speaker and traveling to so many places and speaking and so on. And one of the things that I tell people, and I'm sure they don't believe it until they experience it for themselves, is this isn't about me. I'm not in it for me. I am in it to help you, to do what I can to make your event better. When I travel somewhere to speak, I'm a guest, and my job is to make your life as easy as possible and not complicated. And I know that there are a lot of people who don't necessarily buy that until it actually happens, and I go there and it all goes very successfully. But people, today we're so cynical about so many things. It's just hard to convince people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know you're speaking over 100 times a year these days, I think, and that's a lot of work, a lot of getting around.
It's fun to speak. So
Yeah.
I enjoy it. Well, how did you get involved in doing things like managing the Magic Johnson camps?
Well, because I was doing my MBA and I was part of the basketball program at Cal Lu, working under Mike Dunlap, he needed a little bit of organization on how to do the business management side of it. And I got involved with that. I had a lunch with Magic, and then it was, well, gee, why don't you help us coordinate all our camps or all our station work? And so I was fortunate enough to be able to do that for him. I'll just share a couple things from that I remember really well. One of the things that Magic just kind of, I don't know, patted me on the back like I'm a superstar in a way, and you remember that from a guy like Magic.
Mm-hmm.
Simply, I put everybody's name on the side of their shoe when they register. I have 100 kids in the camp, but everybody's name's on the right side of their shoe. And Magic saw that, and he realized, being a leader that he is, that he could use his name and working, their name by looking there, how powerful that was for him to be more connected, and which he wants to be. That's the kind of guy he was. So that was one thing, just the idea of name. Now, obviously, as a teacher, I've always kind of done the name thing, and I know that's important. But you know, I second thing that's really cool with the Magic Camp is that the idea of camaraderie and kind of tradition and bringing things together. Every morning we'd be sitting in the gym, Magic would do a little story, kind of tell everybody something that would inspire him, from his past and so on. But each group had their own sound off, Michael. So if he pointed at your group, it would be like, whoop, or whatever it was. Each group had a different type of sound. And every once in a while, we'd use it and point it, kind of be a motivator. And I never really put two and two together until the last day of the camp on Friday. Magic says, when I point to your group, make your sound. And so he starts pointing to all the different groups, and it turns out to be Michigan State Spartans fight song to the T. Figured that out. It was just fantastic. It gives me chills just telling you about it now, remembering how powerful it was when everybody kind of came together. Now, you being a speaker, I'm sure you felt those things when you bring everybody together and it all hits hard. But that was one I remember well.
Wow, that's pretty funny. Cute.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
It's
I mean, he has always been a leader, and it's very clear that he was. And
yeah,
I remember the days it was Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird.
yeah, yeah. Well, when he came to LA, they had Kareem and,
Yeah,
Byron Scott, a whole bunch of senior players, and he came in as a 19-year-old rookie. And by the end of that year, he was leading that team.
yeah.
He was the guy driving the ship all the time, and he loved to give those assists. He was a great guy for that.
And that's really the issue is that as a real leader, it wasn't all about him at all. It was about how he could enhance the team. And I've always felt that way. And when I hire people, I always told them, I figure you've convinced me that you can do the job that I hired you to do. I'm not going to be your boss and boss you around. What I want to do is to work with you and figure out how the talents that I have can complement the talents that you have so that we can enhance and make you more successful than you otherwise would be. Some people got it, and unfortunately, all too many people didn't, and they ended up not being nearly as successful. But the people who got it and who I had the joy to work with and really enhance what they did, and obviously they helped me as well, but they were more successful, and that was what was really important.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. It's not about controlling, it's about growing. I mean, people grow, and helping them. Certainly, there's a reason there's no I in team, right? We've heard that many a times before. It's all about the group pulling together, and what a lot
Yeah,
of fun I have working in all throughout my life in pulling teams together and seeing that happen. 1 + 1 = 3. I guess we call it synergy, that type of thinking. It's certainly
right.
be yeah.
Well, you've faced a lot of adversity. Is the pancreatic cancer maybe the answer to this? But what What's a situation where you really faced a lot of adversity and how it changed your life?
Hmm. You
Where you
know,
had to overcome major adversity
yeah,
and, what you learned from it?
sure. I think being 100% honest and transparent, I'd say I went through a divorce
Mm,
in my life, and I think that was the most difficult thing I've gone through. Times where I'm talking to myself and being crazy and thinking stupid things and whatever. And I think the adversity that you learn and the resilience that you learn as you go, hey, I can move forward. I can go forward. And when you see the light on the other side and you start to create what's new and different for you and be able to kind of leave the pain, but keep the happiness that connects from behind and go forward, I think that was a big part of that. But having resilience and transforming from whatever the event might be, obviously pancreatic cancer, I talked about a transformation there. Anytime we kind of change things, I think the unstoppable mindset is really, within this program is about understanding that opportunities come from challenges. When we've got problems, we can turn them into opportunities.
hmm
And so the adversity and the resilience that I think I'd like to try to learn and build and be a part of and helping people is taking what you see as a problem and changing your mindset into making it an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've obviously had things that guided you. You've had a good sense of vision and so on. And I talk a lot about don't let your sight get in the way of your vision. But how's a good sense of vision guided you when necessarily the path wasn't totally obvious to you? Or have you had situations like that?
Absolutely. And I think the whole I write about it in my book in Peak Experiences about having vision in terms of your future self, your future think, where you're going, visualize how that's going to happen. Certainly, as a basketball player, I would play the whole game before the game ever happened by visualizing it and getting it in my mind as to how it was going to happen. I do that with golf today. I'll look at every hole and I'll visualize what that vision is that I want to have in terms of getting it done. Now, when I have a vision where things kind of don't match up and I have to change that on the fly, well, that's okay. That's just part of life. And I think having resilience, because things don't always go your way, that's for sure. But the mindset you have around what happens when they don't go your way, is big. As a coach, as a business coach today, every one of my clients write a 3 month or 90-day plan every quarter that gets down to what their personal goal is, their must-have goal, and then another kind of, which is all about getting vision in place to start putting in actual tactical strategies to make all of that happen for the 90-day period. And that's a big part, I think, of kind of establishing a vision. You got to look in front of us, what's going to happen. And we can control it if we have a good feel of it, for ourselves and get the lives and fulfillment we want out of life, I think.
Yeah. Well, you've clearly been pretty resilient in a lot of ways, and you continue to exhibit it. What kinds of practices and processes have you developed that help you keep resilience personally and professionally?
I think one of them for sure is that I've lived a life where I've spent, I'm going to say, 5 out of 7 days where I will do a serious sub type of workout. And right now it's bike riding. I'll ride several days a week and, get in 10 to 15 miles. It's not a lot, but I mean, I've done, but keeping the physical being in the time to come down, the time to think about what you're doing. And at the same time, for me, it's having a physical activity while I'm doing that. But it's a wind down time. I also do meditation every morning. I spend 15 minutes more or less doing affirmations associated to meditation, and that's really helped me get focused in my day. Basically, I look at my calendar and I have a little talk with every one of the things that are on my calendar about how I'm setting my day, and that's my affirmation time. But yeah, those kind of things I think are important. Having habits that keep you resilient, and I think physical health has been important for me, and it's really helped me in a lot of ways. At the same time, bringing my mind I think accepting in a transition of learning a little bit, accepting the platinum rule rather than the golden rule.
Mm.
I got to do unto others as they'd like to be treated by me. I don't need to treat people like I'd like to be treated. I need to treat them how they'd like to be treated by me because they're not me. And I've had to learn that over time, better and better as I've got older and how important that is.
Well, yeah, undoubtedly so. And I think that we we don't put enough effort into thinking about how does the other person really want to be treated. We again, it gets back maybe to a degree to our discussion about humor earlier. We're so much into what is it all about for me that we don't look at the other person, and the excuse is, well, they're not looking out for me. Why should I look out for them?
Right. One of the biggest breakthroughs I've had is working with a couple that own a business, an insurance agency, and they were doing okay when I started them. They've done much better, and it's beside the story. The big part of the story is how they adjusted and adapted, and that I think you're probably familiar with DISC, and I think most people that'll be listening on the podcast are, but D is a high D dominant kind of person that likes to win and probably doesn't have a lot of time for the other people's feelings. Let's just put it that way. She's
Mm-hmm.
married to somebody that's a very high C, that's very interested in the technology and everything else. And the two of them were having some challenges, and once we got the understanding of each other through looking at their disc profiles, all of a sudden things cleared up a whole bunch. And since then, they've just been a pinnacle of growth between the two of them. And it was just as simple as getting an understanding of going, I got to look at it through your eyes rather than my eyes when it comes to being a leader in this company and how it. Sure, I'm still going to be demanding. Still, I'm going to be I'm not going to apologize about it. But what I got him to do is carry a Q-tip in his pocket. And so every time she got on him kind of in the bossy way, he just pulled out the Q-tip. And I said, that stands for quit taking it personal. Don't you love it?
Yeah. Well, and it's so important that we learn to communicate better, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with what happened with them. They
Yeah,
started communicating better.
yeah, yeah.
Do you ever watch a TV show on the Food Network channel? I haven't watched it for a while. Restaurant Impossible.
Oh, restaurant and pot. Yeah, I think is that guy.
No,
Guy,
that's not Guy. It's Michael. I'm blanking out.
whatever. He goes in and fixes up a
He
restaurant.
fixes up restaurants.
Yeah,
And there was one show where that exact sort of thing was going on, that people were not communicating. And some of the people, relatives, were about to leave and so on. And he got them to really talk and be honest with each other. And it just cleared the whole thing up.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing how that works.
He's just so good at analyzing situations like that. And I think that's one of the things that mostly we don't learn to do individually, much less collectively, is we don't work at being very introspective. So we don't analyze what we do and why what we do works or doesn't work or how we could improve it. We don't take the time every day to do that, which is so unfortunate.
Oh boy. Yeah, that continuous improvement, Kaizen, all of that type of world, so critical to getting better, and again, that comes back, I think, a little bit to mindset and saying, hey, but also systems. I mean, I've always got systems in place to go, let's go back and look at that and what can we do better? And if you keep doing it every time, in a certain period, things get a lot better and you have very fine tuning, and that's how you get distinguished businesses, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about working together. So go ahead.
I was working with a guy at Disney, or a guy had been at Disney, and he was talking about how they do touch point analysis for every place that a customer could possibly touch anything in whatever happens in their environment, and how they analyze that I think it was a monthly or even at least a quarterly basis, where they go through the whole park and do an analysis on that. How can we make it better?
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of that goes back to Walt having a great influence. I wonder if they're doing as much of that as they used to.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, because it's getting pretty big and the times change. Hopefully
Yeah.
they keep the culture. Uh,
Yeah.
culture.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, in a cultural perspective, I just thought of something I'd share with you that when I went into Westlake Village High School as a basketball coach, I walked into the gym and there was a lot of very tall, I mean, this is a very competitive team and a competitive school, 6'11", 6'9" kids, that are only 16 years old. And I looked around and I realized that I'm a kid from Canada here, I gotta figure out how to make this all work in a quick, fast, and a hurry way. And I thought these kids were a little more interested in looking good than rather being good. And I think I'd been around enough basketball to see that and know that. And so I just developed a whole philosophy called Psycho D, right on the spot almost, which meant that we were going to build a culture around trying to hold teams under a common goal of 50 points. Common
Mm.
goal for successful teams. And so we had this, I started to lay that out as this is the way this program is going to work, guys. And son of a gun, if we didn't send 5 of those guys on to Division I full rides. And I don't think they would have got that if they, every college coach loves a kid that can play defense.
Yeah.
That's what we prided ourselves in. And of course, the band got into it, the cheerleaders got into it, the whole, and then of course, I bring in that Special Olympics thing, and that's part of that whole culture. Guess what? I mean, we exploded it with a really powerful culture of a good thing going on. And I think you got to find that rallying point for all companies and groups that you work with, don't you, to kind of have that strong culture. Obviously, you have a very huge culture around your world. Yeah,
Well, try. And it's all about, again, um, enhancing other people. And I want to do what I can do, but it's all about enhancing and helping others as well.
yeah, yeah.
How about trust? I mean, that's very important in leadership. I'm sure you would agree with that. Where has trust been a major part of things that you do, and what's an example of a place where trust really made all the difference in leadership and in an endeavor that you were
Yeah.
involved with?
Yeah. So often, clients that I've had probably don't have they don't have the same knowledge and background in certain areas of, we all have to help each other in growing and having them to trust in terms of knowing their numbers and sharing with me what their previous 6 month P&L or year to date P&L, that kind of thing, so that I can take that profit and loss and build out a pro forma and build where we're going with the business. There's an element of trust that you have to give somebody all your numbers like that. And I'm asking for it on my first coaching session. And so how do I get that trust that quickly? I'm not sure exactly. It seems to work well for me. One of the things that I focus on in understanding people when I first meet and start to work with them is that by asking a simple question, I'll ask them something like, "How was your weekend?" And by their response, I can get a bit of an idea
Mm-hmm.
whether I need to get them to trust me before they like me, or whether I got to get them to like me before they trust me. And if the response is, "Had a great weekend," without any social response at all connected to it, then I know that I've got to get those people to trust me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got to present myself in a way that's very much in a trustworthy. Where the response might be, "Had a great weekend, went out golfing with my buddies." As soon as I hear "with the," now I know I need to get that person to like me before they trust me. And so that's a skill set that I've developed, I think, in just recognizing who I'm talking and building trust. But it's critical. And once you trust somebody and you don't give them reason to not trust you, you show up on time, you do all the right things, it gets pretty strong.
Yeah.
It doesn't take but 5 or 6 positive. That's what the guy said he's going to do. He's done it, and he's on top of it to start trusting people, I think.
Well, I think that trust is all around us, and we keep hearing about people don't trust each other, and there's no trust anymore in the world. I think there's a lot of trust in the world. The issue isn't really a lack of trust totally. It's more we're not open to trust because we think everyone is out to get us, and unfortunately there are all too many ways and times that that's been proven that people haven't earned our trust.
Right.
And maybe we trusted someone and we got burned for it. And so we shut down, which we shouldn't do. But the reality is that trust is all around us. I mean, we trust that the internet is going to keep this conversation going for a while. I shouldn't say that because now we're going to disappear, right? But but trust is really all around us.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I tell people regularly is, look, I want to trust, and I want people to trust me. If I find that I am giving my trust to someone and they don't reciprocate or they take advantage of it, that tells me something, and I won't deal with that person anymore. But I'm not going to give up on the idea of trust, because trust is so important. And I think most people really want to trust. And I think that they do want to have trusting relationships.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. And when it's one of those things, when you have it, you don't have to talk about it. You just have it. It's there.
Right.
Yeah, and it's
well, it's like I talk about. Well, in the book that I wrote last year, that was published last year, Live Like a Guide Dog. Guide dogs do love unconditionally. I'm absolutely certain about that. But they don't trust unconditionally. But the difference between them and us, unless there's something that has just completely traumatized them, which isn't usually the case, they're open to trust. And they want to trust, and they want to develop trusting relationships. They want us to be the pack leaders. They know we're supposed to be able to do that. They want to know what we expect of them, but they're open to trust. And even so, when I'm working with like a new guide dog, I think it takes close to a year to really develop a full, complete, two-way trusting relationship so that we really essentially know what each other's thinking. But when you get that relationship, it's second to none.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? How long were you with Rosella before the event?
Rosella and I were together. Let's see, what was it? It was February or May. No, it was the November of 1999. So it was
Good 2 years.
a good 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, we knew each other, and even so, I know that in any kind of a stressful situation, and even not in a stressful situation, my job is to make sure that I'm transmitting confidence and trust to Roselle, or now to Alamo.
Right.
And the idea is that on September 11th, I, all the way down the stairs, just continue to praise her. What a good job. You're doing a great job. And it was important because I needed her to know, first of all, that I was okay, because she had to sense all of the concern that people had. None of us knew what was going on the stairwell, but we knew that something was going on. And we figured out an airplane hit the building because we smelled jet fuel, but we didn't know the details. But clearly something was going on. So I needed to send her the message, I'm okay, and I'm with you and trust you and all that. And the result of that was that she continued to be okay. And if suddenly she were to suddenly behave in a manner that I didn't expect, then that would tell me that there's something different and something unusual that's going on that I have to look for. But we didn't have to have that, fortunately, which was great. It's all about trust, and it's all about developing a two-way trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, and it's funny how when you say trust, when in a situation where trust is lost, it's not so easily repaired.
No.
Yeah.
And if it's really lost, it's because somebody's done something to betray the trust. Unless somebody misinterprets, in which case you've got to communicate and get that confidence level back, which can be done too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to be tuned into that.
But it is important to really work to develop trust. And as I said, I think most people want to, but they're more often than not, they're just gun shy. So you have to really work at developing the trust. But if you can do it, what a relationship you get with people.
circumstances, and situational analysis change the level of trust, of course, in so many ways. And some people are trusting people where they shouldn't, and in the wrong environment. Sometimes, you have to be aware. And I think people are fearful of that. I mean, just even in our electronic world, the scammers and those people, we get one or two of those, messages every day, probably people trying to get you to open a bank account or something on them. Better be aware. Don't want to be losing all your money.
Yeah.
Place not to have trust.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one we got to work on. Well, so you support the whole concept of diversity, and how
Yeah.
has embracing diversity of people, perspectives, or ideas unlocked new opportunities for you and
Oh,
and the people you work with?
I got a great story for you on that, Michael. When I got into this coaching business, one of the clients I was lucky enough to secure was a group called Shredding on the Go. And so the mother was kind of running the show, but her son was the president and kind of the one that was in charge of the company. Now he's wheelchair, 100% wheelchair bound, nonverbal, very, very, I don't remember the exact name, but I mean, very, very restrictive. And so what she figured out in time was he was young is that he could actually take paper and like putting paper into a shredder.
Hmm.
So she grew the idea of saying, gosh, something James can do, we can build a business. This kid's, I'm gonna get behind this and start to develop it. And so she did. And she had created a company. She only had 2 employees when she hired me, but we went out and recruited and ended up growing it up to about 20 employees. And we had all the shredders set up so that the paper and all of our delivery and so on. And we promoted that company and supporting these people and making real money for real jobs that they were doing. So it was all basically all disabled,
Mm-hmm.
autism to you name it, and it was just a great experience. And so we took that show to the road. And then so when we had Earth Day, I'd go out and we'd have a big event, and then everybody would come in and contribute to that and be a part of growing that company. Eventually, we got to the company to the point where the mother was worried about the owner, the son's health was getting, his life expectancy was beyond it, and she didn't want to have this company and still be running it when he wasn't there. And so we worked out a way to sell the company to a shredding company, of course, and they loved the client. We had over 50 clients going, and they ended up making quite a bit of money that they put back into helping people with disabilities. So it was just a great cycle and a great opportunity to do that and give people an opportunity. I got to be their business coach, and what a lot of fun! I included myself in the shredding. I was involved with all parts of the company at one point. What a lot of fun I had with everybody. It was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for really learning what other people do in a company and learning the jobs. I think that's important. It's not that you're going to do it every day, but you need to develop that level of understanding.
Michael, you'll love this. Our best shredder was blind.
Mm.
She did more than anybody, and she was blind. People go, "You can't be doing that when you're." What do you mean? She had it figured out.
Yeah. What's the deal?
Yeah, no,
As
yeah,
long
no
as, as
deal.
long,
It's
as long as your
great.
shredder doesn't overheat, but that's another
Yeah,
story.
yeah, yeah.
So, what's an example? You've worked with a lot of teams and so on. What's an example where a collaborative effort really created something and caused something to be able to be done that otherwise wouldn't have happened?
Right. Well, I referred back real quickly to the Psycho D thing, where
Mm-hmm.
everybody had a common goal, common pride in taking it, and we just were on it. And I think that was a really, really transformational kind of thing to make everybody better as one whole area in a team. That's probably the first thing that comes to mind. I think the idea of bringing a team together, and really getting them to all work as one is that everybody has to understand everybody else's action plan. What's their plan? What is their vision? Where are they going in terms of, playing basketball to whether you're on the sales team, whether you're on the marketing team, or whatever part of the business you're in, do you have an action plan? And you can openly show, and you feel like you're 100% participating in the group's common goal. I can't overemphasize an element of a common goal, I think, in team building,
Hmm.
whatever that may be. Typically the companies I'm working with now, we try to change it up every quarter. And we shoot quarter by quarter to a common goal that we all, and then we build our plans to reach and achieve that for each individual within a company. And it works really well in building teams. And it's a lot of fun when everything comes together. Example of how a team, once you've built that and the team's there, and then you run into adversity. We have a team of 5 people that are selling insurance, basically, and one of them lost her father unexpectedly and very hard. Hispanic background, and just devastating to her and to her mother and everything. Well, we've got a machine going in terms of work. And so what happened is everybody else picked up her piece and all did the parts and got behind her and supported her. And it took her about 5 months to go through her mourning phase. And she's come back and now she's going to be our top employee now going forward. It's just amazing how everybody rallied around her. We were worried about her. She comes back and she's stronger than ever, and she'd had her time. And it was just nice to see the team of a group of company kind of treat somebody like family. That's a good thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What a great story.
Yeah.
What mindset shift do you think entrepreneurs and leaders really need to undergo in order to be successful?
Boy, we talked a little bit earlier about the idea of looking through it through other people's eyes, right? And as a leader, the same thing you were mentioning earlier, Michael, was that you draw the strength out of the people rather than demand kind of what you want them to do in order to get things done. It's build them up as people, and I think that's a critical piece in growing people and getting that whole element of leadership in place. Yeah. What was the
Yeah,
other part of that question again? Let me give you another piece of that because I was thinking of something.
go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just remember what did you ask me again? I want to make sure I'm right.
Um, from your books and coaching work, the question was, what kind of mindset shift do you
Right.
think that entrepreneurs and leaders have to adopt?
Yeah, yeah. So that's one part of the mindset, but the big one is recognizing that it's a growth world. That we need to look at how we can grow our company, how we can grow individuals, how we can all get better and continuous improvement. And I think that is the example of taking a problem and recognizing it as an opportunity. And that's part of the mindset right there that you got to have. I got a big problem here. How are we going to make that so that we're way better from that problem each time it happens and keep improving?
Yeah,
That's the
and that makes sense.
yeah.
Well, if you could leave everyone who's listening and watching this today with one key principle that would help them live and lead with an unstoppable mindset, what would that be? What advice do you have?
Yeah. My advice is make sure you understand your passion and what your purpose is and have a strong desire to make that happen. Otherwise, it's not really a purpose, is it? And then be true to yourself. Be true to yourself in terms of what you spend your time on, what you do in terms of reaching that purpose. It's to be the best grandparent there you can be in the world. Go get it done, but make sure you're spending time with your grandkids. Don't just talk it.
Yeah.
So talk's cheap and action matters. And I think figure out where you're spending your time and make sure it fits in with what you really want to have happen in your life and fulfilling it.
Well, I like that. Talk's cheap and action matters.
That's it. Yeah.
I tell that to my cat all the time, and she doesn't care, but that's okay.
Well, cats are like that.
Well, we all know that dogs have masters, but cats have staff. So, no, she's a great kitty.
That's
She's
good.
a wonderful
That's
kitty,
good.
and I'm glad that she's in my life, and we get to visit with her every day too. So it works out well, and she and the dog get along. So you can't do better than that.
That's a good thing.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. This has been absolutely super. I think we've talked a lot, and I've learned a lot, and I hope other people have too. And I think you've had a lot of good insights. If people would like to reach out to you and maybe use your services as a coach or whatever, how do they do that?
Well, my website is coachhess.com.
HESS.
Yeah, COACHHESS.com. That's my website. You can get a hold of me at coachhess.com. That's my email. Love to hear from you. And certainly I'm all over LinkedIn. My YouTube channel is Desk of Coach Hess. Got a bunch of YouTubes up there and on and on. All through the social media, you can look me up and find me under Coach. Coach Hess is my brand.
Cool. Well, it's a well worth it brand for people to go interact with, and I hope people will. So,
Oh, I appreciate that.
well, I want to thank you all for listening and watching us today. Reach out to Coach Hess. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think of today's episode. So please give us an email at michaelhi@accessibe.com. Wherever you're monitoring our podcast, please give us a 5-star rating. We value it. And if you know anyone who might be a good guest to come on and tell their story, please introduce us. We're always looking for more people to come on and chat with us. Coach, you as well, if you know anyone, I'm sure you must.
Yep.
Love to get more people. Now, if you could get Magic Johnson, that'd be super, but that's probably a little tougher.
I'll work on it.
But it'd be fun. Anyone that you feel we ought to chat with, I would appreciate it. But again, I want to just thank you for being here. This has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, Michael. It's an honor to be here.